Bold leaders, no buzzwords, no BS. This is Mastering Workplace Culture, real talk on crafting workplace cultures that deliver results. Each episode, we go beyond corporate speak and talk with leaders who've actually done it. Those who've faced breakdowns, made bold moves, and built organizations where respect and results carry equal weight. If you're ready to challenge assumptions, gain actionable inspiration from proven mentors, and build a workplace culture that actually works, this podcast is for you.
Well, hello and welcome to the next edition of the Mastering Workplace Culture podcast. I am a co-host of the show, and I'm Chris Edmonds, and I'm joined by my other co-host.
Hi, I'm Mark Babbitt.
And we are delighted to have Fred Richards to join us today. And I'm going to do an official bio to give you a bit of background on Fred. Fred has spent more than 30 years leading brand and packaging design initiatives for some of the world's most recognizable consumer brands. You can see some of the cool things like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and knee-high boxes behind him. He's in the Chicago Brand Museum, and we'll also hear a bit more about that. Over the course of his career, Fred has held leadership roles with global branding firms, including Future Brand, Interbrand, and Brand Union, and he's helped shape creative strategy for companies such as P&G, Kellogg's, Lindt, Nestlé, Unilever, Bayer, Smuckers, and many others. Beyond client work, Fred is a sought-after speaker, design judge, and branding expert whose work and insights have appeared in publications including The Wall Street Journal, Adweek, The Economist, and Communication Arts. Fred's newly opened, see here it is, Chicago Brand Museum reflects both his passion for iconic consumer brands and his belief that great design shapes culture, memory, and emotional connection. Fred, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, fellas. Great to be here. I don't know if you noticed the blush was going up.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It matches the Coca-Cola color.
And now, Fred, you got a lot to live up to, so no pressure.
No doubt. Pressure's on.
So, Fred, Chris and I are both absolutely intrigued by the Chicago Brand Museum. Can't wait to go there ourselves. In that museum, you take visitors back to their childhoods as they view classic products with unique brand stories. Congratulations on the opening. Thrilled to hear it's already been so successful. Tell us, surrounded by all that nostalgia, tell us what makes certain brands and certain cultures emotionally unforgettable across generations. What makes a brand or a culture stick?
Great question. Well, first of all, thank you, fellas. I appreciate your time and including me today. I think there's a number of answers to that question. The first, I think, is assets, right? Assets matter. How do you imprint who you are on your consumer? And how do you maintain those assets over time? I think lots of businesses do not understand the power of their assets, and they just want to change them because they think it's cool or trendy, etc. But I think that that's where the mistake is made. The second one, which I'm really passionate about, is what I call the opening ceremony. How does the consumer engage with your package? And I think we talked about this in our interim conversations, is how a brief's going to be written for these packages to ensure that consumers remember you the first time, not just the visual, but also the entire engagement of the journey from the first time you use it to the last time you use it, and then to be able to go back again. My favorite anecdote is Altoids, right? that wonderful little tin of mints is, even when you pick that tin up, it makes that sound, right? You crack it open, you push the paper aside and you go inside for the mints. You push the paper back and then you crack the tin close. All of those little steps are part of the brand engagement that we remember, that they're part of the brand journey. But nobody ever throws that little piece of paper away. right? To the very last minute, it stays there. And I think they are the things that I think are important to brands, the same way that you open a Monopoly box, for example, and you take all the pieces out, you put them back carefully, right, for the next time you're going to use it. And there's many other examples that we could talk about. But I think they are, if you can combine those two things, then that's what creates the nostalgia. How do I see you? How do I use you? And how do I remember you? And how do I remember that experience?
You know, Fred, I never even thought about the Altoids or Monopoly analogies, but I was just thinking the last time I played Monopoly with my grandkids, you're right. It was even the 8-year-old was meticulously putting the pieces exactly where they belong back in the box.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a really special moment, right? You open that box and there it is all laid out. Even if you've had that box for 20, 30, 40 years, right? It's there. It's laid out properly. And people take care of those things, right?
They really do. Well, and you think about the grandkids, the first time they played might have been thinking cool toys, but there's that whole engaging experience of playing the sport of Monopoly right together. Um, Fred, I love the terminology about assets. Does Altoid realize the power of that tin? My guess would be they do.
I would argue absolutely they do. I mean, it hasn't changed in such a long time. It used to be owned by Kellogg and Bowser in Scotland back in the day, and before the Wrigley Mars acquisition. I think that if it were to change, if it were to be improved, so to speak, if those people were to take over, you can already see what the brief would look like. It would be plastic. All of the pills would be regular. They'd be marked with a little A. All the corporate stuff that we do, but all of the things that are irregular and different about that brand is what makes that brand so special, and why it endures in a commodity category like mints. So I think that they do understand it. And I think the brands that do understand who they are and how consumers engage with them are the ones that survive, especially in today's society where we're so hell-bent on things like AI and everything now and everything digital. The brands that deliver an experience are the ones that are going to keep moving forward.
Well, guys, if you don't mind, I'll share another example of that. Fred, I don't know if you have Chiba Hut sandwich shops in Chicago yet.
I don't think so.
It is I am not the right demographic. Every product in the store is named after some kind of stoner language. From the size of their sandwiches to everything. And they sell Rice Krispie treats in several different varieties the size of a locomotive. and they know. I was talking to a manager. I said, you do understand how my kids and my grandkids perceive that, right? I mean, you can be on a subway, you can be at a baseball field, and somebody pulls out one of those Rice Krispie treats and starts unwrapping all that saran wrap. And 3 people will come up to that person and go, "Where did you get that monster?" Right? I mean, they're 10 times the size of Rice Krispie treats own Rice Krispie treats, right? And they know exactly. I mean, it's got to be like the Costco rotisserie chicken. They don't make any money off of them. It's simply so people go, "Holy crap, where'd you get that?" And they know exactly what they're doing.
That's wild.
I'll check that out.
Let's talk a bit, Fred, about workplace culture and the folks that you've worked with over your 30 plus years. You've not only been part of companies that have cultures, but you've also been running the Hive principle for 10 years, longer?
Let me see. 5 now.
All right. And it has a culture, which is sometimes something that needs managing. And just too many leaders were never taught. Why should I pay attention to? There's all kinds of metrics I have to pay attention to. There's spreadsheets I have to pay attention to. But why should leaders design their workplace cultures with the same intention that they bring to assets, to brand development to product strategy?
So that there's two answers to that question. I'll go client side first. I think that the old adage, you are what you marinate in, for corporate cultures is critical, and a fish stinks from the head down, right? The CEO is not leading by example, then you can smell the culture pretty quickly. I've been very fortunate in my career, actually. I don't really have very many villain client stories to tell. And I certainly wouldn't divulge them here either or name names. But I've been very, very lucky to have worked for CEOs that not only led their organizations culturally by the way that they behaved and operated. I mean, the likes of A.G. Lafley at Procter & Gamble, not a friend or as somebody I know very well, but somebody I certainly admired the way he led that organization. Chris Makowski being another one at Mule Rubbermaid. And then prior to that, her role at World Kitchen, Paul Chibe, Ferrero, Anheuser-Busch, Wrigley, Martin Schlatter would be another one. These are people that led by example, but also they were individuals that you wanted to impress. You wanted to show these individuals what you were capable of doing, not for brownie points, not for butt kissing or anything like that. You wanted to show what you were capable of, where your skills lied, because you believed in what they were trying to do for that organization, and you believed in the vision, and you believed in the product as well. I think that those things are important. Paul Chive said something to me a long time ago, is that great leaders understand how the sausage is made, and they can tell you how the sausage is made. And that stuck with me for a very long time. On the Hive principle side, and actually from previous roles, I used to do a thing called Fred Fridays, and this is something I learned from my office. And the simplest way to describe it is on a Friday for a 2-year period plus, I would offer myself up as the intern for the organization for the day, and there's a number of reasons for that. Of course, it's a lot of fun. People had a lot of fun with me. If you want me to make the tea or the coffee or order sandwiches or sweep the board, want the boss do those things, sure, not a problem. I will do them. But I'm also trying to learn your job from your perspective as well. Really, really marinating myself in what you're doing every day so I can actually help you with your job on the Monday morning, because I will see it in a different way. And it also gets rid of excuses. A member of staff cannot say to me afterwards, "You don't understand." It's on them then to teach me what I don't understand about their job. Those nuances, those niggles, working with other departments, working with other peers, you can actually start to understand where the frustrations might be, where the tensions might be between certain individuals and certain departments, because you're there. And the other thing about it, I found over the many times I've done it, is people forget you're the boss when you're sweeping the floor in front of them, even though they've asked you to do it, and they want to fun ridicule you for doing it. If you keep doing it over a certain period of time, the Fred Friday idea is they do forget. They become far more comfortable with you doing those things, and they'll start talking about other things around you, in front of you, forgetting who you are, so to speak, and the responsibility that you have. And you'll learn the company from the bottom up versus from the top down. And I found that to be an invaluable tool to help build cultures, positive cultures, and for people to be far more comfortable to give me the feedback that I needed to be able to make this business and what we're providing as a service to our clients far better.
Well, I got to tell you, Fred, I love the idea of offering yourself up as an intern. Chris, we have to steal that idea. We have to pass that along.
You'll get royalties, maybe not. Whatever.
And I guarantee you, I'm gonna use the phrase "smell the culture." From now on, Fred, from job applicants to consumers to investors, how does that deliberate design of the culture that you just described shape overall perceptions in the company brand? Can that itself be an asset?
Oh, for sure. I think there are numerous examples of great businesses that are driven in that way, that deliver great consumer experiences from a retail or an online perspective. We could wax lyrical and name drop all we like about those examples. But I think that the consumer has gotten very smart about smelling the BS from an organization. If it's not authentic and the business is not delivering on what it says it is, the consumer will find it very quickly. And the old line that, consumers vote with their wallets. I think that's where a lot of these businesses don't understand, being very glib about who you are and how trendy you are or why you're different. If you're not different for a real reason, then you've got nothing. The old cynic idea of, understand the why first, I think is really, really important. And that's from a corporate standpoint, a business standpoint, a consumer and a design standpoint. You can't design it if you don't understand what the why is.
Well, and what I find interesting in the internet day and age, which has been with us for 30 years or whatever, there is a very interesting dynamic when a company is perceived as not being authentic, not being honest, not treating their own people right. Well, there's a groundswell very quickly that can cost you not only sales, but stock price. Certainly reputational value goes down, but the opposite is the case too. There's a nurse who I follow on Instagram who is a NICU nurse. So she helps with deliveries, all that stuff. And she's just very articulate. And she talks a great deal about how the medical system isn't necessarily designed for the comfort and trust of its patients. It is a very differently designed kind of a beast. But about once a week, she will do this. Okay, don't tell. But I just got cookies from this little bakery in some small town, and they don't have enough followers, and you need to buy their dozen cookies and have them delivered to your house. And there's this immediate groundswell towards the positive. Okay, I don't necessarily have to live in town and go see that bakery to support them. So there is a very interesting immediate consequence,
right,
with knowledge in the internet age. Have you guys seen that as well?
Yeah, sure. Having, and thanks for saying it, 30 years plus in the industry, I've seen all kinds of things. Two examples, I suppose, without naming names. I was part of an organization that had just done a large reorg, downsizing. We all know how that works. And in the same meeting, they offered up to improve culture, to give everybody a feel-good factor, a ping pong table in the story. It's like, did you have any idea what you've just said? A ping pong table is going to buy you nothing. And I think the same is true from back in the day of things like, Pizza Fridays or Donut Mondays, all these kinds of things. Again, staff can see through it. The old saying that, culture eats marketing for breakfast. I think that is very true. And I think that sometimes leaders, HR departments, etc., have got to see where the water is flowing first. Understand the culture that you have and where it's going, and then nurture that culture. Don't try and control it. Because if people are already doing their job very well, and the business is growing, or the business is successful, or numbers are looking good, or there might be a slight variance there, then understand that why first and help it along versus coming in with manuals and handbooks. The joke I make about designers is that when they get a corporate identity guidelines, they don't read it. They flick through it, find out the things that they can do that aren't in the manual, and that's where they will head. And that's where the water will flow, least path of resistance, right? And I think culture is exactly the same thing. And that's where management, CEO specifically, has got to nurture that and lead by example. And that's why, it's a silly example, but I think it's a good example as well. The Fred Fridays are really, really important. Show your own humility and put yourself in a vulnerable situation. Time and again, doing it once is really easy. The thing I've said to designers many times, and I've said on some other podcasts, when it comes to climbing the Mount Everest, if you will, of the design industry, of the global head of, the organizations that I've been fortunate and privileged to have led, I've climbed Everest. I've been to the top and I've come back down. And what a lot of people don't understand about climbing mountains, getting to the top is only halfway. You've got to come back down, and you've got to bring that knowledge with you. And more climbers die on the way down than they do on the way up because they're exhausted. The whole thing that they've been hell-bent on is getting to the top, and that they're spent. And I think doing something once, like running a marathon or climbing a mountain, doing it once is anyone could run a marathon, right? If you train for a year, you'll finish. You won't necessarily get a good time, but you'll do it. But doing it again and again over time and trying to beat your time and show people that you're doing it again and again, I think that's the important thing. And again, that's why the Fred Fridays were important. If I'd just done it the one time, it would have been a novelty. But doing it again and then offering yourself up to the different departments, there was a chart on the wall, pick when you want Fred and why you want Fred. There might be a critical moment or there could be something going on in the business. You see how the business performs when times are tough from that perspective. And I think that those things are really important. And lots of organizations miss those things. And sometimes with the best will in the world, HR just gets in the way.
Yeah, it's where I went with your mention of initially the Fred Fridays was it removes fear that many leaders, some maybe intentionally, most I think just it's just so quote normal that people don't engage with you. They don't tell you the things that are driving them crazy. And I remember doing a keynote years ago in a small town in eastern Washington state, got to go in and meet the leadership team in advance. And as we were walking then to the cool auditorium where all the leaders were going to come in for this, presentations, recognition, and my little spiel, there was a story I heard from one of the VPs who said, our president had, founder built this, machine, and here we all are kind of keeping this machine running. But he comes in the morning, and he'd been there 40 years, comes in the morning, doesn't look at anyone, walks right to the elevator that goes to his floor, doesn't engage with anyone in the lobby of the elevators, goes up, does his thing, comes back down again, leaves without engagement. And he said, I asked him about this about a year ago. I said, you need to talk to people. And he said, I don't know their names, which was pretty cool. I mean, he's thinking back to when we had 15 people or we had 100 people, and now you got 1,000. Learn their names. But he for whatever reasons, way back when, that was his way of dealing with. I think he actually felt badly that he didn't know their names. But the trick is, you can say, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. And all of a sudden you've kind of broken down a bit of that. Well, he's the CEO.
Yeah, I've definitely lived that example. In one of my roles, I don't know how many people were reporting to me in this particular office in Midwest, but it was a lot. And I was the new guy. And it's a challenge. You have to, you want to show that you care, but if you're not very good at remembering names, and we all have that problem at even dinner parties, right? You've got one person's name to remember and they've said it to you twice and poof, that name is gone. One of the things I instigated is what I call the wet and a dry room. Now, what does that mean? Dry means what most design studios have become, which is people in cubicles or at desks in front of a Macintosh, firing away on Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, whatever the program might be, printing or creating digital presentations. And they're very much siloed, right? They're very, very good at those things, don't get me wrong, and the content they produce is amazing. But I'm more interested in the people and the personalities as well and how they think. And I'm not going to be able to understand that while they're sitting in front of that device. So a wet studio is devoid of any technology at all. In fact, on some days, we wouldn't even allow people to bring their phones into the room. We'd ask them to put them in bins.
Wow.
And everybody would sit around one table, huge, with markers and crayons and paper and tracing paper, all the things you would need to be able to create. And you do it together. And that fosters a very different culture as well, because you will start to learn people's names because of what they do, how they do it, what they say. Those little moments, you'll start to attach someone's name to that moment. Now, that might create nicknames in your head, for whatever reason. Of course, if it's inappropriate, you don't say it, but it will help you remember the person's name by the way that they behave. And I also think it's a phenomenal way to create, because that accident of a moment will actually help you understand what they're trying to solve, but also what they're doing, and it will help your idea be better. And I think that's another problem with corporate culture, is the hierarchy of corporate culture. Even when you're in a presentation, the feedback loop, if you will, you start with the lowest ranking person and you go all the way around the room, and then the person with the highest rank can veto everything that everybody said, which is a complete waste of time. It's very demoralizing, and they'll say, I want this. Well, you could have said that at the beginning if that's the kind of person or leader that you are. A wet room environment, because nobody's sitting by hierarchy, you're sitting to create. It breaks down those barriers as well, and also helps people learn each other's names because of what they do, and actually create relationships beyond the business as well. I've seen in the past.
Well, and I'd love to, it's a great segue to this question. You've worked with huge companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, startups, and you've encountered company cultures that didn't align with the perceptions of senior leaders. How, when you saw that, when it happened, what advice did you give those leaders? Sometimes they're not ready to listen. So it might also be, what advice do you wish you could have given those leaders?
This is, oh boy. When we had our discussion about this opportunity today, and we talked about some of the potential questions, and that was this is the one that is the pivot point potentially, right? And what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
That one is very difficult, and I think that if it's that blatant, if it's that obvious that the culture is that broken, or the teams internally on the client side are not aligned, and sometimes it could be an individual, sometimes it could be politics that you're not quite understanding, or other things that have gone on in the organization. Maybe business is down, or a retailer is barking at them for whatever reason. I think that designers, creatives have got to be curious about the business. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on here at Hive. And what I've been lucky with my career is understand the client's business first. And again, it goes back to what Paul Child told me a long time ago, which is go to the floor and see how the product is made. And that is also a little bit of a Fred Friday moment as well. If a fish stinks from the head down and walk the floor, the plant, well, whatever's being manufactured, and the CEO, doesn't know people's names, people you can see are running away from him or her as they're walking the plant, and they don't understand how that machine takes this and makes this, then you can start to have a conversation about how these things can be fixed. And you can have a far more candid conversation as well. And I think, like with all of these things, is be human first. And I think designers forget that sometimes, that they're so hell-bent on Pantone's color of the year, or, what do I think about Helvetica, or am I going to win a design award, or how cool are we? Was I dressed the right way to give off this perception that I'm all fancy dancing? It's enough, right? Understand the business and understand why they've invited you into the room. The creative part of the marketing mix should be the most exciting, the fun part. And I think a lot of people get that wrong, and they make it worse, not better. So if it is wrong, it's broken, it's toxic, walk the floor first. Get out of that boardroom. Don't go for dinner. Don't go for drinks. Drinks and cocktails and fancy whatever are not going to solve the problem. Get to the floor and have other people see that you are there to help fix it.
Fred, you're giving me PTSD in my Silicon Valley days. I was brought in to help fix a startup. 3 founders, all 3 college buddies who grew to absolutely hate each other. But their idea of culture was, I'm going to be an unlikable jerk. And Chris, be proud of me. I used the word jerk instead of the swear word. But we're going to bring in pizza on Fridays. And I'm going to get up on the stage and give a frat brother rah-rah speech about how great we're all doing, when everybody can look around and see we're not doing really great. We're not, it's no fun working here. It's not great. So, yeah, PTSD was real in that, listening to you talk.
Can I jump in on that? Because I think that the reward culture is grossly misunderstood. You can't buy people with a pizza. I don't think you ever could anyway. And I think that, organizations that are still doing it, I'm not saying stop giving your folks pizzas. If it's showing up as a reward, then it's wrong. A former boss of mine, who I learned a great deal from, actually, I think he's one of those bosses you don't quite appreciate how much of a boss he is at the time, because it was tough love, and it was financial tough love. It was a gentleman in Switzerland by the name of Martin Amann. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. But we did really, really well one year. The numbers are off the charts, and it was a lot of change internally to get to the business to where it was. And in the October, when we were starting to wrap up the numbers, that formula, right? You're looking at the books. Martin Amann did something which I thought was remarkable. The Christmas party that we had that year, and everybody was exhausted. And to be honest with you, because people were so exhausted, I'm not exactly sure how many people wanted to be there. But husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends were invited, etc. And Martin Amann, to your point, Chris, about knowing everybody's name in the organization, that was one of his biggest skills. He went around the room without a script, without a PowerPoint, and told a little anecdote about every single person that was sitting in the room from that year. It was incredible. People were crying, happy tears, right? And that was a really, really powerful moment. But the most powerful moment was on everybody's, this was before dinner, on everybody's plate was what looked, or appeared to be, was the name card, had your name on it, of where you sat. He asked everybody to open the envelopes at the end of his speech. And inside the envelope was a check, a Christmas bonus. You'd have to wait till March. It was right there and then at the Christmas party. And every single person, whether you were the janitor for the building or you were the CEO, got the same amount of money.
Wow.
It was such a powerful moment. I will never forget it.
That is powerful. Wow.
And he said, we did it together, so we shared the money together. And
that's awesome.
That was one of the best Christmas parties I've ever been to. I didn't necessarily want to be in either. Not that people got horribly drunk or anything, but it created a culture right there and then. Because we all had the same war stories from different perspectives, but we also all knew what the next year required. Because what does it do? It incentivizes, if I got this check this year from all of that, what can next year look like?
Well, and imagine, Mark and I coach leaders all the time, that if you're not incenting the team, then you're going to be incenting individuals who may learn that they can get more credit, more notice, etc., if they don't share information and they are not working cooperatively. And that has a very big impact on the culture too. It's fascinating.
Fred, let's be really practical for a moment. Let's just say I'm applying for a job at XYZ company, and the website looks great, and I've done the research on LinkedIn. The CEO seems engaging. They've been noted as a great place to work here and there. Some negative reviews, but not terrible. But then you get to the interview and something just feels wrong. Something doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't click. It doesn't match what their online persona is. How can people tell when a company culture is, I don't know, performative versus authentic? I mean, are there signs we can look for, red flags we can see?
Oh boy, that's a can of worms. I think the old days of being subservient in an interview are long gone. And a lot of companies do not understand that. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And especially the way that the work cultures have changed, people working from home, etc. I think that if it smells bad, if this, then it, you can feel it intuitively. So it's not the job, it's not the role for you. I would also ask that moment, what kind of due diligence did you do? Have you spoke to current employees? Do you know somebody that works there that you trust? Have you talked to former employees? Why did they leave? And I think also interviews, for the most part, are just really stale and formulaic. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but you're asking me the questions. One of the things we used to do, Interbrand specifically, is I got tired of knowing that we were looking for new creatives, but then the team quite rightly would find the people that they liked, and then this one person would be then rolled into my office to be blessed, essentially. And I told one of my creative directors, her name is Rick Mariani, he's absolutely is fantastic, brilliant creative, is I'm not the Pope. I don't want to be doing this, and I don't think the formula that we have is right. So I think we should all do it together. And I'd like to break it down into sections where at any time during the interview process, I can show up versus being at the end. So I'm not wasting any time. And I think one of the interviews should be in a retailer. We'll go to a Kroger or a Walmart, whatever, and walk the creative through those aisles to understand, do you understand the world in which we live in? This is what we're responsible for every day, right? Making consumers, again, identify those assets, engage with this packaging, put it in their cart and leave. Not how cool they are as a designer or whether they look right for our department. I'm not interested in those things. And in the interviews, the way that it evolved, your portfolio gets you in the door, your resume gets you in the door. So you've ticked those boxes already. I've read your resume, I've seen your portfolio, so I know that you are good. I've made a phone call. I want to know how you're going to fit into our team. And the way that we used to do that was, don't talk about design. In fact, I don't want you to talk about design at all. I don't care if you like this designer or that designer or you read this magazine. I expect you to know those things. I want to know who you are. I want to know how you're going to make me a better boss. I want you to tell me how you're going to make this culture better. How you think, what you do at the weekends. So, I used to joke about it. I said, if you go hang gliding at the weekend, I want to know about that. Right? That sounds dangerous as hell to me. Right? And it sounds like one of the most lunatic things you could ever possibly do. Get a tent, strap yourself to it, throw yourself off a mountain. What is that about? Right? Because nobody else on my team does that.
Yeah.
So that is interesting to me. Or anything else that you might do. But if it's another softball league player that plays for the local, whatever, we've got 4 of those already. We don't need another softball player.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not interested in your hobby. I want to know more about who you are, what makes you tick, and how inquisitive and curious are you as a designer. As a teacher of design, I teach at SCAD. I tell the students that all the time. I don't care that you've got a great Pinterest account or you know who's cool or whatever. When was the last time you went to the theater? Not the movies, not watching Netflix at home. When was the last time you actually went to the theater or the ballet or the opera or any of those kinds of things? How are you learning about the way consumers consume and putting yourself in an uncomfortable place? And I think that corporate interviews need to be doing those kinds of things as well. Bringing people in, having them all sit in the lobby. You know who you're interviewing against because you can see them sitting there, right? Nobody wants that experience. Is to change those kinds of things up. And again, I think that's an HR issue, which I understand that the protocols of HR and why those things are needed. But I think if they were a little more relaxed, I think it would be a far better experience for everybody.
Yeah.
For both parties to be able to make a decision. You're not right for us. I'm not right for you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to dive in a bit because you work very hard to create a culture that reinforces creativity. It's the nature of design. And you need all kinds of different players to and their experiences and their beliefs and whatnot to help make great products for your clients. And sometimes with these long-term engagements that you have, you've got challenging, even toxic work cultures that make it difficult for your designers. How do you coach your project team members to keep your culture, the Hive culture, alive during difficult projects because their culture is so awful?
Yeah, that is a great question. Again, I think it's about what kind of manager do you want to be? Um, I still say I've yet to meet anybody that wakes up in the morning on their way to work and says, watch me mess this up. I am going to follow my way to upset every single person I work with today because, right? Nobody does that. Most people, if they're having a bad moment, they're just praying for 5 o'clock, right? They just need to get through the day for whatever reason. And I think good leaders have got to understand what those reasons are, right? It could be all kinds of things. Mum's just been diagnosed with cancer. The kid isn't doing well at school. The husband's being an idiot. It could be lots and lots of things, maybe all of the above, right? That is driving these things. And you need to be aware of those things. You need to be sympathetic to those things. So the way that we do it at the Hive is we do quarterly reviews, and that sounds a little formulaic as well. We break it down. One of those reviews is about where are you? Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing well? And the organization will review you. These are things you need to be doing better. These are things you need to be doing more of. These are all the boxes that you're ticking because it's just who you are, what you inherently do, and you're excellent. This is why you work here. The second review is what could we be doing better? We want that feedback first. And we actually don't really talk very much in that meeting, actually. And you have to take some of the body blows of the things that you said you were going to do last quarter that you haven't done. You said you were going to follow up on this. You said you were going to put me on that training program. Here we are 3 months later, and you haven't done it, Fred. You're right, I haven't. Let's do it in this meeting. Let's book it now and hold ourselves accountable to that. The third one, I think, is the most important one, actually, which is when are you going to leave? And what do I mean by that? I have been really, really fortunate in my career to have some bosses in my career that have helped mold Fred Richards. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, quite frankly. I admire they should have medals, some of them, for what they've had to endure managing me. I'm sure it was not easy. I know it wasn't easy. But the thing is, they all helped me get to that next job. So I actually turned that around to say, my job, not only to just ensure that you're engaged here as a creative and you feel secure, that your job is safe, is to help you get to the next one. Right? So it gets rid of, again, what we talked about at the beginning of today's conversation. It gets rid of those awkward conversations of, oh, I've got a dentist appointment, or I know you're not at the dentist, so let's pretend that you're not, because you might be interviewing at a place that I know the person you're going to be interviewing with.
Yep.
Right? So help me make that phone call for you, because it might be time based on the first conversation, the first review could say, it's time for you to go. Let me help you get that job, because that actually helps the industry. It helps my reputation. It helps their reputation. It makes everybody better. And it gets rid of that uncomfortable moment of, how do I tell Fred I'm going to resign?
Yep.
It should be a celebration of you are moving forward and you're going to a bigger or a better organization, or you're starting your own thing because you believe it's right or whatever. But it also helps the conversation to say, I don't think you're ready yet. And let me tell you why. I think there's one box you have to tick, and let's work on that one box for the next 3 months and go into that organization. I know it's shiny. I know that the grass might be green on the other side, but it's not. And here's the reason why. I think you need to be going here and here and here. Let me make some phone calls for you. And there's many people who might watch this podcast who worked for me in the past that would back that up. I was very, very blunt and open about those things. And then the fourth one is, okay, where are we? Where do we stand? Okay, how is your mum? How's the treatment going? Not that you're having to wait a full year, but you're bringing that up because you are concerned about how that person's behaving, because you understand that there are other things happening in their life, and that maybe career advancement is on hold because how is the job application process going? Not that you're wanting them to leave, but they should be comfortable with it in how they're building their portfolios to be a better person when they leave. Because the joke is, I want people taking my people.
Yeah.
Right. That person worked for Fred Richards. Yeah, I want that. Yeah. And I think that's true because of the people that I worked for. I mean, Dave Brown, and I hope he watches this. I mean, still to this day, Gordon Smith would be another great example of creative leaders that I'm still friends with to this day because of how they molded me and lessons that they taught me back in the day. I apply every single day. There you go, Dave. I said it.
Awesome.
I stole where
I
you're
love it.
All right, now we have to have Dave on the podcast. Just
for sure.
Yeah.
And we know someone who can introduce us.
Yeah,
anyway.
we might. Fred, you from the creative professionals on your team to the company executives you've worked with, maybe you find, like we do, that people are deeply trained in their craft and also trained to focus mostly on results and not on the relationship management skills that you've described so well today and that are so important to culture development. From your experience, can we teach human connection, compassion, culture to people who are not naturals at designing and leading a culture? In other words, can workplace culture be taught?
Yeah, I think that's another podcast in its own right.
There we go.
There's three answers to that one, and maybe there's a follow-up question that I think about a lot. The first is my background in playing rugby. Jim Telfer, who was a Scottish rugby player and a Scottish coach, said that there's two kinds of rugby players: the honest ones and the others. And I love that, because there's nowhere to hide on a rugby field. You have to do your job. And the other thing about a rugby field is it accommodates all different shapes and sizes. You might have a 6'8", 300-pound whatever, and then you might have a 5'2", 180-pound on the same team playing the same game, right? And it's very unique for that reason. And you have to help each other out, because you can only advance the ball forward by passing it backwards. You have to support each other, right? The other one is mountain rescue. I did a lot of stuff back in North Wales a long time ago. And those teams are built of 4 individuals. And my job on those particular teams was to get the other 3 up the mountain to solve the problem and get them and the other people back down again safely. That was it. So sometimes you're bringing a doctor who is a doctor to that point. They might not be a very good mountaineer, but they're a very good doctor. So when we get to the point of impact, I'm not telling the doctor how to use a bandage. Leave that person alone to do their job. That's your job, is to get that person there and back. And I see that a lot in corporate culture, where people are leaning over their individuals from one department to another, trying to tell them how to do their job. And that really, it drives everybody crazy, right? But it also creates a lot of animosity. And then the third one is a little strange. When I first came to the States, the best man at my wedding, I was his best man as well, was in the restaurant trade. And I spent a lot of time with him watching how restaurants operate. And I thought to myself, if the design industry could only understand this, how you're greeted at a restaurant, how you're seated at your table, how the menus show up, who serves you and why. You don't see the chef coming out of the kitchen to plate your food, right? Everybody knows their role and their responsibilities. And I think lots of businesses and great fine dining restaurants could learn a lot from those things. And underlining all of those things, again, is understanding the business. Designers and design agencies, for the most part, and it's a sweeping statement, and it's going to upset a lot of people, don't understand business. It's true. They're very, very, very good at designing. They're very, very good at creating beautiful things. But that's why so many design agencies fail, is they don't understand the fundamentals of how to run a successful business. Because if you are not healthy, you can't be healthy for your client.
Well, and isn't it interesting, because sometimes we find leaders that do withhold all of that information. Mm-hmm. And so it handcuffs the designers the waiters, right, the receptionist in your office from serving the customers the best and the business at the same time.
Yep. It's amazing to me, and I've seen it so many times where design agencies are putting the wrong people in front of the client. And then that could happen for a number of reasons, capacity issues, or the designer is so precious about the work that they feel that they have to present it because they feel that they know it better than the rest of the team. And I always think that that's a mistake. If you have to be there to over-explain what the idea is, then it's not an idea. Right? Yeah. Let the account people and the strategists do their job as well, and then be there to add to the equation, not overpower the equation.
I have to tell you, Fred, this time has gone very, very quickly. Your insights, not just on design, but how to make the humans involved in it feel valued, feel respected, and connected, is priceless for our listeners. And we did promise you that we were going to take a few minutes here at the end of all the formal questions and just ask, so when you're not working, when you're not opening a brand museum, what do you do to recharge and to kind of take a breath and enjoy?
Sure. Well, kids are the first thing, right? I'm a big child as well. My wife says you're the biggest 5-year-old I know, and there's truth in that for sure. So that would be the first step. The second is I can't take my nose out of a book. I don't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room. I just don't want to be the dumbest person in the room, right? So I'm trying to keep up and reading. And then, as I mentioned earlier, my rugby community is very important to me. And there's not only because I played for as long as I did, not so much anymore. Those days are long gone. But the rugby club is a great place to refresh myself because I don't know any of the designers that play rugby. I'm one of the anomalies. So when I go down to the rugby club, I'm surrounded by firemen, policemen, teachers, lawyers, plumbers, electricians. I mean, you name it, that are talking about their lives and what's keeping them awake at night. And that's really solid consumer moment, a consumer environment. Think about it that way. And it's a really good place to ground myself with friends that I've shared blood with, gone to battle with, and then watching the next generation come through the rugby club and help mold those young guys and girls as well. It's a real community. So that's where I will go if I need to be refreshed, smoke a cigar on the sidelines. And the old adage is also true. The older I get as a rugby player, the better I played in my day. I would never have done that. I would have sidestepped him and I would have knocked him. All those kinds of things. It's a fun thing, and it's incredibly refreshing. So I keep my finger on that pulse a great deal. And then, as I said earlier, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say it. Art museums, galleries, events, theater, all of those kinds of things are very, very important. And go to things that you wouldn't necessarily want to go and see. I give you an example. Going to see the theater version of Frozen with my 7-year-old daughter was incredibly painful. It was my cup of tea. It was far too much pink for my taste. But watching her go through that and daddy-daughter moment, it was spectacular. You can't replace moments. And I learned something from it. Of course I did. You go into the theater, you're seeing real people doing real things. So be human. That would be my answer.
Yeah. Boy, that is probably the most important thing we can reinforce, and we should act the same way. Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred, for your time today and your insights. Again, I know that our listeners are madly taking notes and going back and reviewing clips already. Mark, anything to add here at the end of our show?
No, well, first of all, I'll reiterate, thank you for being here. This has been a unique conversation for us because not only are you a leader of companies and an influencer of corporate executives, but you come at it from a completely different perspective than we've experienced so far. from the branding, from the design perspective, intentional design. So this has been an insightful conversation for me, and I'm sure it is for our audience too.
Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, Fred, we are gonna maybe talk more about talking more.
Sure.
Because we did open some doors, and it's just been a wonderful learning experience, listening to your examples and stories. And with that, we close this edition of the Mastering Workplace Culture podcast. Stay tuned at masteringworkplaceculture.com and our YouTube channel. We would love to hear what you think of this episode and others. And again, Fred, delighted to have you here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This has been Mastering Workplace Culture. No jargon, no corporate fairy tales, just leaders who show their scars and celebrate their wins. Do something with what you heard today. Subscribe, share, take action. Creating a culture that equally values respect and results is your responsibility. Go own it. When you're ready to make that happen, we're here to help. We'll catch you in the next episode of Mastering Workplace Culture.